If you want news and rumors that appeal, welcome to the Dusty Wheel. If you want news and rumors that appeal, welcome to the Dusty Wheel.
Hey, welcome back to the Dusty Wheel. I'm your host, the Innkeeper, and this is our live call-in talk show all about the Wheel of Time. Now, today is a special episode of our live adaptation. If you've followed us for the last 7-8 months, we've been doing this for a long time, and we're already well into the Great Hunt. We're having a lot of fun with it, and in just a moment, I'll introduce our guests. But before that, I just want to remind you, this Watt Wednesday, we have Mike from Mike's Book Reviews coming in. We're going to talk all about his experience reading the entire series and reviewing it for the last year. Can't wait to ask him some questions there. And then the following Sunday in a week, we're going to have a special new readers episode. We're going to have the Wheel Weaves podcast and one of our viewers that came on, Emmy from Australia. Can't wait to have both of them. We're talking about the new reader experience for us old readers, if you will. And then the following Wednesday, our special guest, we're going to be mapping the Wheel of Time, Josh Stolars. We can't wait to have him here with us, talking about the maps that he created, just the whole process that he went through. He's done some amazing work. Hope you have a chance to check him out. But yeah, definitely be back with us for that episode. So those are the next three that are coming up. Just wanted to cover those before we jump into this. So without further ado, let me welcome our panelists today. Welcome back, everybody. We have Mary, who is holding up the Great Hunt there. Todd is holding up his cup. And Natalia's back with us. You're a fan favorite. The chat was asking where you had gone, Natalia. Wow. It's so good to have you back with us. But our special guest today, Elliot, you want to give a little wave up
Hello,
in the left-hand corner? Elliot, as he said, is he's head of production for Thread Magazine, a self-proclaimed wannabe Wheel of Time YouTuber. Those were his words. I think he does a fantastic job. Hopefully you've gone down to the description and checked out his work before this. The Thread Magazine is actually an online publication aimed at Gen Z, and as they say, shaped by youth culture, powered by social change. Can't wait. We're so excited to have you here with us, Elliot. I loved your,
like I said, pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I loved your work. I loved your video, and I hope you continue to do more. Do you have one in the works? Do you have more Wheel of Time content that you can tell our audience is coming?
I've got a few actually, and doing the research for this kind of gave me an idea for one. So there's definitely a lot more coming.
Okay.
I really love making them. So
yeah, everybody go check out the link in the description. Go subscribe and make sure to follow him. We will be also following. We'll have you back again on the show. We're gonna be doing this every week until until we don't. I don't know. Years. It'll be years. So we can't wait to have you back and do more of this kind of stuff. But for those of you that are first timers with us, this is our live adaptation episode where we break down one of the Wheel of Time books, which happens to be The Great Hunt. We are in chapter 28. That's where we're going to begin today. And this is how this works. We do a little scene-by-scene discussion of what's important to keep here, what can we cut, who can we cut. If we were the individuals breaking this down in the writer's room with Rafe Judkins for the TV episode, series, and such. So basically, we want to get in the writer's room and pretend that we're there and make decisions. And my lovely panelists are here to help decide which person gets cut. Sometimes we famously cut Loyal and brought him back with a retcon. So that's the kind of things that we get to have fun with, and I get to ask for a little vote from the four of you. And what's nice is we have 5, so we get to make some real tough decisions together. So now let's just jump into the first scene, and with that, remind all the people that are watching, there's going to be some spoilers. Look, it's just going to happen. We're live adapting a book. inevitably one of us is going to say something like, when Rand did this, later on in the books, and it's just going to happen. So those of you that are watching right now that just came and we're hoping we weren't going to do that, I just want it's at your own risk at this point. So spoilers are going to happen. Thank you for Taylor for reminding me to put that warning up. And without further ado, let's jump into chapter 28. I love this chapter because we get a little point of view from Perrin here. And we start to kind of get, we find out that obviously he's been communicating with the wolves, or they've been communicating with him. We hear about the fact that Rand has a name now. The wolves are calling him Shadow Killer, which is awesome. We do find out that Varen is also worried about Mat, and then we meet an Aiel here named Urian. Is there something here, and maybe let me throw this out to you, Elliot, as our guest. Was there something as this chapter began, or as this chapter gets going, that you think is really important from just establishing a foundation for the viewers of the TV series that needs to be translated from book to TV?
I think as this is the first time we meet an Aiel, and I think as I was going through these chapters, I know we meet some Aiel again in the steading later, and I was umming and ahhing, sort of, I think maybe you could condense the two, so we only meet the Aiel once, but then which would be a better occasion? And I did feel like this was the more interesting interaction that took place, because a lot more was revealed about the prophecy of looking for he who comes with the dawn and establishing that, and then because it's from Perrin's point of view, and you've got Mat as well, and they're sort of making the connection of, or maybe this is Rand that he's talking about.
Right,
and I feel like that is quite an important thing to get there. But it did strike me as a scene that could be quite a shorter, condensed scene, a nice sort of like move away from Rand and the A plot and sort of take a nice little breather, catch up with Perrin and Mat and see where they're going.
Yeah, it's an interesting one where we do really get this really brief moment, and then we jump into a lot of other things that are happening, and then later on, then they show up and finally get back together. I wonder if there's just, I don't know, it's just as you're a reader and you've gone through this book so many times, you come back and it's like, wow, they're just laying out the whole plot here, right? Like they just do a lot of exposition. And so the question is, to me, like, Mary, do you want this much exposition, right? We hear, let me bring up some things. He brings up the threefold land, and not only that, just bringing it up, then he's like shaping a stone to make us, testing, ground to prove our worth, and a punishment for the sin. I mean, that's laying the foundation pretty, thick. And then he's like, Varen's a wise one, mentions Ruidian, lies in the land of the Gen Aiel, the 13th clan. Many go, few return, they're marked, old prophecies, we can't fail the Aes Sedai, not willing to strike a woman, maidens, he's searching for he who comes to the dawn. I mean, it's like...
It's a huge info dump.
Yeah.
It is here it is. Here it all is. And it makes so much more sense the second time you read the book through. Or the 40th time or more, depending on how nerdy you are. One thing that's interesting about this chapter is I have the paperback. It's only 6 pages long.
Yep.
That's crazy. Oh,
it is
man.
only 6 pages long. There is a huge amount of information here. And from a television point of view, the first time we encounter the Aiel is going to be intense. It's going to be epic. It's a clash of cultures. I mean, there is a lot of clash of culture that happen in just these 6 pages. And if the Aiel are staying in the series, and I have no idea why they would ever not be in the series, you need to have a first contact. And so that part, whether it's here or somewhere else, I like the fact that the first contact happens without Rand in the group. That does help a lot. One thing that kind of struck out to me from a foreshadowing point of view is when, and it doesn't even have to be Urian. It might be interesting if it's Avienda or if it's Gaul or somebody else that becomes a larger player later in the series. That I can see happening easily. But one of the things that Urian says is that, their prophecy says that the Aiel will return to the wetlands. Doesn't use that term because it's theirs. And then like the next chapter, we haven't gotten there yet. The Seanchan are returning to the wetlands because it's theirs.
Right.
But you've got these dueling colonial point of views coming and prophetic things coming up, and how each of them deals with it differently.
Can we do then? Let's do our first vote here between the panelists. Because I think there is a good case to be made for, I like that what you brought up and what Elliot both brought up, which was, where do we choose to do this first contact? I do agree that without Rand, it's more interesting. I like the parent emphasis and the wolves here, but I don't know how much point of view is going to really translate from an adaptation standpoint. So I like that about this chapter, but specific to the books. Do we have an Aiel first contact before they reunite with Rand? Is the panel on board with this? We definitely should. Okay, yeah. Everybody's in. Okay, so cool. And I'm kind of curious for those in chat that are watching us, do you think this is the right time? Did Robert Jordan lay this out just perfectly? If you were adapting this to TV, is this the time for the first contact with the Aiel? I love that it's Urian, but like you said, it doesn't have to just be him. There's just something very Aiel about him. But
something else, there's something that it does. It shows he doesn't care. All those guys on horses with lances and bows and swords, and he's just like, let's dance, dude. Let's get it on. I'm not scared. And it just kind of shows you this attitude that the Aiel have, that they're ready for it whenever you want to go. I'm ready.
Yeah.
And I also want to say, I think it's really cool that the one-eyed guy is the one who points him out. He's the one who sees him.
Uno's the one that sees him.
That's funny.
I love that line as well. Where he's like saying, "I saw him, therefore he wanted me to see him." It's like that level of establishing the Aiel as just like these really cool desert-dwelling super soldiers.
Really. What's so interesting about this is he does. I don't think as much exposition, and I'm hoping that they don't do this. That's one of the things I would not adapt, which is I don't think it's necessary to do everything that Jordan's done here. I think he winks at the reader a lot in his foreshadowings, and I think that works really well. I just think for TV, always just having to go into this much detail, I think he can drop some hints here, but I don't think because Varen starts questioning him and he's like, let me tell you everything that I can tell you. And you're like, I don't think you need this much level. I think just himself interacting with them and the things that how he reacts to them, and he, drops a couple hints. I think that's going to be plenty to make people really interested in who is this person, who are the Aiel, and I want to know more, and they can move on. Natalia, is there anything here that you would say must be adapted? Whether or not it has to do with the Aiel or something else that happens later on in this chapter. Is there just something that just helps kind of create the foundation of either characters or the plot of the story itself?
He who comes with the dawn. This is our first. I mean, yes, it's a bit of an exposition dump, but there's a lot of show don't tell just in seeing Urian and in seeing an Aiel warrior sort of just come out of the rocks, to Elliot's point, and just be like, hey, what's up? And sort of see what his visual reaction to Varen is going to be, because that gives us a hint that the Aiel have their own innate version of channelers, and sort of the respect that those women are given, and how excited Varen gets about the possibility that they have channelers.
I thought it would also be really cool is at the end of it, he just turns around and walks away. What would be really cool is if he turns around and walks away, and then all of a sudden like 20 more of them come up that nobody saw also turn around and walk away.
Yeah, but you almost expect that. So yeah, I think it would be funny, but at the same time, you're like, I would rather just see him kind of like disappear and showing them just how good he is at blending in and not being seen. I don't know. Yeah, that's an interesting question. There is a moment here I do want to bring it up to the panel and everybody watching. Is this okay? And yeah, and I want to be tender with this subject because this is a spoiler, and so I'm going to double down on spoilers. Is this Varen's next lie? Okay, she says, "I cannot tell you where he is, Urian." Okay, maybe she can't. And I have heard of no signs or portents to guide you to him. That last piece, when she says, I have heard of no signs or portents to guide you to him, to me, that speaks like that is a lie. And I don't know, do you see ways around this? Do you think that this is I know we all make a kind of a big deal about her previous, the time, was she lying before about Moraine sending her? But this one kind of spoke to me a little bit that I hadn't really focused on before, and I'm kind of curious. And in the panel, did this hit you? And do you think that Varen is lying here? Do you think this is just kind of part of it? Is this just her way of kind of being Aes Sedai, and she's getting out of, she's not lying here in essence?
I feel like she's parsing it because he's saying he who comes with the dawn, and she's thinking Dragon Reborn, and I think she's using that to get around it. That was kind of my thought on it.
It also could be that she hasn't put the two and two together, that he who comes with the dawn is the Dragon Reborn. I mean, this is the first time she's heard it. And in her mind, it could be they're two separate people. She hasn't even made that connection yet. So she doesn't know who they're looking for. So she can't say that I've seen anything that can help guide you to him, because I don't know who this person is.
Okay. I mean, I'll give you that. I tend to believe Varen knows exactly what she's talking about. But I will give you that Robert Jordan can parse us here and say, yeah, Varen doesn't know. She's not 100% sure who he comes to the dawn with. So therefore, she can't give any signs, or hasn't heard of any signs or portents to guide you to him. Whether or not that's,
My point is, Jimmy raised a good point in chat, which is what I was going to say. Not our Jimmy, another Jimmy, who can also be our Jimmy. Sorry. Just that she didn't hear anything. She read the prophecy.
Okay. Yes, yeah, that's very fair. And I'll give you the didn't hear. Okay. that totally goes with it. And yeah. I do say there's one comment that ends this chapter before we move on that I love, and it's Perrin's moment where he says, "Everything has been crazy since we got mixed up with the Aes Sedai," which is just like,
fair.
You don't have to adapt that line. It's just something that everyone will know, right? Intuitively. He's just reminding us, right?
Hashtag true story.
Okay, so yeah, I really love this. We brought up a lot of kind of interesting things. I think this first context of Aiel does need to stay. We can probably do without as much exposition, a lot more show don't tell here, but this is such a key moment. I'm glad we kind of, beat it to death a little bit. I think it's important. So, chapter 29. I had forgotten just, and yes, to those watching, we're going to get to Barthanes Manor, and hopefully someone in chat has told everybody else in chat, spoilers are done for now, big spoilers, so you can come back in and listen for those that kind of stepped away. And maybe before we jump back in, for those watching, if you're new, please like this video, subscribe and support the channel. We really appreciate that. If you're over on Facebook and Twitter, give YouTube a chance sometime. Come over, sign up, and jump in chat. It's a lot of fun, and I get to see people's comments, and it's always hilarious for me. If you ever see me laughing, totally unrelated to what my panelists are saying, it's because somebody in chat has just said something very funny. So let's jump into chapter 29. Bornhald, we get the White Cloaks again, and Elliot, I want to come back to you on this question. Do you think that the White Cloaks are important to return to in this moment? Or can we get away with just kind of briefly seeing something having to do with the White Cloaks going on, but we don't necessarily have to sit here and go through this whole little village, piece? Is there something important that's coming out here from a characterization standpoint?
Yeah, when I reread the scene, I was struck by how much I kind of wanted to include it, but definitely I think this needs to be much briefer. It could be just like one of those cutaway breath of fresh air kind of scenes. But I do think keeping up with the White Cloaks will make for a more satisfying end with the battle at Fulham and that. So I think keeping up with them is important, and establishing them is always kind of good to keep doing. So yeah, I would say as a scene, it should be kept in, but made a lot briefer. Like perhaps just, him, Bornholt sort of seeing the devastation and then demanding the question to get someone to like talk to, and then the scene cutting with the person about to like spill their guts on everything that's happened.
Yeah,
Sort of
I think you're right.
that, keeping the Seanchan a bit of a mystery as well, but whilst at the same time sort of seeing the effect of them before we actually see them.
But by the way, you brought up an awesome phrase, which I will never forget: keeping up with the White Cloaks, which is very much like keeping up with the Joneses, but but now it's keeping up with the White Cloaks. I love that aspect. I think that's right. I think we do need some piece of it. I'm very much in favor of shortening this to be. I feel like this is very much something that they can just show us the bodies, and then he's we can just pan over that and then we go to him and then he gets this note of what he's supposed to do, and it can be really something shorter. Natalia, would you do something bigger here? Would you actually dig in and take this as a moment to really not reintroduce us, but introduce us to the White Cloaks and how things work? No, you would still also cut this. Would you cut this completely, or would you?
I would cut it completely. Honestly, okay. the only I love the intrigue, but I think it's too complex. If we're looking to sort of introduce the White Cloaks as our chaotic good, and then I think including them in the political intrigue is going to be challenging for us in terms of keeping track of who's who and who's really good versus who's kind of good. But I want to keep all of Doman.
Yes. And yeah.
So
this one's a hard one, right? Because this is where people are splitting up, right? And they're going to have to make some production choices here, which is how much we go into detail. But I want to note in the books, like we're talking about, how do you pronounce this? The gibbet, or I don't know if gibbet, held 30 bodies, including children. There's something extremely powerful of that visual, and associating it with White Cloaks. I mean, Todd, is that important that the viewers see that association? We're not saying that they did it, but we are saying that they're overseeing this a bit and not too offended by it. No, because he says it's not that he did it. They came upon this village. But yes, but he does connect to the questioners to it. Yes, there's a connection. That's what I'm saying is, do we need that type of internal White Cloak intrigue?
I'm going to be honest, Matt. I feel like the people who are going to be watching this series have had enough of people wearing white, stringing up other people. I don't know that we need a visual.
You make a good point, which is, there's going to be some cultural aspects to this that are going to, how is it going to resonate with the audience? But so, and then it goes back to Todd. So do we drop this, or do we need to see this?
I think the only part of this scene that I think holds any meaning is him telling child Buyer, what he wants him to go and tell his son. And so I don't think there's much to this scene really. And I can go without it. I'm all for a cut.
Wow. Okay. So, Mary, before I ask you for final thoughts on this one, is the panel overwhelmingly in favor of completely cutting this or keeping some of it? I'm kind of in a keep. I think Elliot is keep. I heard a cut and a cut. Mary, do you want to define this choice as a panel? Are we cutting this out completely, or are we keeping some part of it?
It depends on how much of the White Cloaks are kept in the series. If the White Cloaks are going to be kept as, and I wouldn't call them chaotic good, I would call the White Cloaks lawful evil myself.
That's better.
That's better. But they're not the only ones who are lawful evil. The Seanchan are definitely lawful evil. There are a lot, and that's one of the things that I love about this series is there are so many factions and who think they are doing the right thing, and Jordan even lampshades this with Shadar Logoth. They're doing the right thing, but they're using the wrong tactics. And it's one of those ultimate questions in the series: does the end justify the means? And if you're going to keep the White Cloaks as an entity in the show, showing them as, whether it be Knights Templar or Inquisitors or, uber fascist, whatever, it can be done. I think it adds depth to the show, definitely, because the entire point of the series is cultures clash and things change, adapt. I think that was the 5-word thing that Jordan said about the series, if I had to summarize all 15 books or whatever. Yeah. If you're going to keep them, then the question is, do we need the White Cloaks on Tomon Head and the Almoth Plain? Or is there enough chaos going on out there with the Seanchan, with the Domani and the Taraboners and their war for that area? And is that needed? Do we care? I mean, do we care that the Domani and the Taraboners are fighting each other over this?
No, we can cut that war.
Yeah, I don't care. I mean, it doesn't really. It doesn't. Yeah, it does. It doesn't come up later the way like Tyr and Ilian having a rivalry comes up later. So that could be removed, but leave the white cloaks in. But I mean, what's the purpose of the white cloaks there to begin with? We know that their purpose was subverted by the Dark Friends, by J.H.M. Carradine, to create chaos and to make it easier for the Seanchan to basically come in and take over. But the way that the Seanchan are presented, I don't think they need the help. They're like the uber fascists coming in.
Okay. So then let me ask everybody then in chat that's watching. Give me a thumbs up if you want to keep the white cloaks here and think this is an important piece of them being part of everything having to do with the Seanchan. Or, because I'm not saying get rid of it. We know the white cloaks are actually going to be in the TV series, so it'd be kind of absurd if we got rid of them at this point completely. But are they important for this? So thumbs up if you think the white cloaks should be part of this Seanchan piece with Tome and Head, and that would kind of instruct how much we kept them here. And then to the panel, and maybe I'll change that. I'll give that to us also. Seanchan with the white cloaks and Tome and Head, do we want them part of it? What says the panel? Yes or no?
Yes.
Cut this scene.
Yes.
Keep the white cloaks.
Okay, so it sounds like our adaptation is, we're going to keep them as part of this whole overall plot. I could for sure drop the whole war there that's going on between the other two nations over the Almoth Plain. I don't really care about that. It does seem like there's a lot of, although Rob in chat just put up like 700 thumbs up, so he kind of cheated visually, because my brain is trained to see as the number of thumbs up, so that's not fair. But I am seeing, and I can't see what people are saying on Twitter and Facebook, but it does seem like people want them to be kept in here. So, because there are some interesting pieces that he brings up about those who return. Jaqen Carradine, I think, is an important piece from a Dark Friend perspective, but we can either make it really short and sweet, and I think that was Elliot's first point, so I think I'm in favor of that piece. But now let's move on to these two chapters are significant. This is what I mean. The Great Hunt is impossible to get through because it's so dense.
It's my new favorite, thanks to you.
Bail Damon, right? We don't, I want to kind of briefly go through this. Yeah, right. He's a legend, exactly. So we see him, and he's like talking. He gives us a lot of thoughts about the Seanchan, and he's hearing about them, and they're trying to take down his ship. And then, how do you pronounce her name? Eganon? I can't remember if that's the right way. Eganon.
I'm gonna look in the glossary. I'll get back to you.
Eganon. I'm gonna go with Elliot. Listen to the Elliot. You listen to the books? Did you?
I listen to the audiobooks, so everything I've got is from that.
Okay.
But as we saw from your interview, that could
be. So it's all wrong.
Yeah. What I'm trying to do is make you make a statement, and then I'm going to go back and research it, and then post on the internet that you were wrong. That's my whole purpose. No, I'm just kidding. I won't do that.
You get used to it.
Listen, Camel is trying to retcon us from chat.
Oh, hey, whoa. Brian, that's mean. We know where you live. We know where you live, man. So there's this whole piece where she comes on, and let's stop there. Before we jump to actually Falme and when he meets Lord Turak, Elliot, this part of Bail Damon, we kept him. He's definitely he's made it this far in our adaptation, so we think he belongs here. Do we need to see him have this moment where the Seanchan stop his ship basically and take over and force him to go to Falme, or can we just cut that short and we just show him kind of being, guided in by these ships, and he's complaining about it, and then he goes and meets him. Is there something key to this initial scene that we have?
I think this, to me, was like a very, very good way of introducing the Seanchan, because it was so kind of specific to the situation of them taking over his ship, and then again, it's that show don't tell of seeing how they react and sort of taking away from that as opposed to being explicitly told. And there's so many instances where Bail will say something, he'll say Aes Sedai, and then he gets slapped around the face, and it's don't say that. And then again, I think it happens again when the Seanchan soldier is left on his ship, and he tries to he's trying to dig questions out of him. And I think both of these scenes from this chapter should be condensed down and made a little bit shorter, but yeah, Eganon's sort of, I just think it's such a good introduction as well to the Damani and everything. It hints at a lot without explicitly telling you. It's almost matter of fact. It's this is what they are. This is it. And it's quite brutal as well. How culturally, how their culture just sort of literally smacks you around the face.
Yeah.
So this is it.
Yeah, that's a good, yeah. I definitely think they even need to include that part where she hits him across the face for saying the word Aes Sedai. For everything that the viewer's seen up to this point in the series, that strikes you as, like, because the Aiel, the first contact we just had with the Aiel, almost showed the Aes Sedai honor, right? And this shows like a complete, dishonor, if you would, related to them. Todd, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I think it's brilliant. These two chapters come one after the other this way because it shows how alike the Seanchan are with the Aiel and how different they are to the Aiel all at the same time. Because they just throw that guy on the ship and on the spray and leave him there. And he has zero fear that they're going to do anything to him. And it's kind of like Urian was when he stepped out of the rocks. But then it also shows like the deal with the Aes Sedai, how they despise them where the Aiel don't.
Yeah, I love these two chapters. I do think it's really nice to kind of introduce them from a first contact perspective on the ship itself and not on land. Is there something about this, Mary, this takeaway, this moment with Bail Damon and Aegonan, or however you pronounce her name, I don't really care today. And is there any part about this introduction that you think we haven't covered that should be included in the adaptation to establish the Seanchan, or even to establish Bail Damon?
Well, Bail Damon's already established. We found him in Eye of the World, and this is just him doing his thing, and he runs into the big bad of the series. And I like the first it's again a first contact thing, but it shows how utterly different the Seanchan are and how utterly powerful they are. They have monsters, they have chained channelers, they have an odd way of speaking, they have they are just so different, and it's overwhelming. I think that's the entire point. I distinctly remember reading this for the first time and being just absolutely overwhelmed by how powerful and scary the Seanchan were and always have been. And I think that thread carries through most of the books, even through the rises and falls of the specific characters in the Seanchan that we get to see. So we need to see how scary they are, that they could just break Bail Damon's ship without even thinking about it. And I can go on and on and on and on for days about the Seanchan, and I will at some point in time. So I won't start that, but you might get some of it creeping into it just because I have very strong opinions about the Seanchan.
This whole section is right. Like, that's what I mean. I hope this is, we've talked about how far they're going to go in the first season. This just goes to show that there's no. I know that people have talked about you can do an hour here, and you can cover this. I'm sorry, with the Aiel coming in and the Seanchan, who play such a significant role, I just don't see how you could ever. This has to be in season 2.
If this is one episode, if we see both appear in the same episode,
it has to be in the same episode.
It does. It would make a brilliant contrast. It really would. And I like the idea of encountering them first on the water, and then you go to Falme and you see the hundreds of ships in the harbor. You see the absolute takeover of the town, and yet you still see the townspeople there that are still doing their thing because they've been completely subsumed by the Seanchan. They're just this unstoppable force. And then you find out this is just the beginning. There are, even more of them coming, more than you see here. It's frightening.
Okay, so I want to take this question back and go back to Natalia and Elliot. Elliot first, and then to Natalia. So this question is this the first time that you believe we should see the Seanchan? In other words, let's say we have an entire first season up to this point. We've had a couple of episodes maybe in season 2 by this time. Is this the first interaction? You might hear about them in the show, but is this the first visual that you think we should have as viewers? Or do you think that there should be some kind of lead up to this where we get hints of them, maybe see them on a ship, somehow see them in Falme? Or is this it? Is this the moment?
For me, I would say yes. I think it is. it deals with them so well that, and it almost sort of does that, because it starts off with like a ship in the distance following them, and then there's obviously the channeling, and you see the power that they have with the Damani, and these huge jets up of water like coming out of the sea around Doman's ship would just be a great visual. And then they come in, and then you meet Aeginan, and then you go into Falm, and you see just, so it does kind of stagger it, but it's all just like in that one sort of like chapter or section of a chapter, and I would say yes. I would say yes.
I love that the idea where you're just pointing this out, right? It should be a ship, right? like we should see it. We should see them for the first time in a ship, and the idea that they're approaching, and we see kind of how they cow the entire population is with their military might. I love that aspect of it. And Natalia, you can branch off of this question, but the question I had for you is, what about the Damane and Soldam? What needs to... Do you think that Jordan does a perfect job here describing this relationship? Is there something that visually we need to see that he doesn't describe to us about this happening? Because this is the first time we ever engage really with a Damane and a Soldam. So do you like this, or do you want to see something different or more?
That's a loaded word. I appreciate how much content we get about the Seanchan in this very discreet. I mean, like, to Mary's point, I think it's probably 5 to 10 pages long, max, and we get so much information about this culture. We hear right off the top that they're not afraid to be brutal. They're not afraid to be ruthless, but they're also similarly not afraid to be completely reasonable and practical. Merchants need weapons. Let the merchants have their weapons. Go about and do your business, because business is key. It's a great way to show us the efficiency and the bureaucracy of the Seanchan in action as she's taking Doman from his ship through the docks, through the town, into the Great Hall of Turok. I think we could probably cut Turok, to be honest with you.
Ooh, interesting. Okay.
Or just turn him into somebody else. I've never cared for Turok as a character, like, whatever. But you could replace him with anybody from the Blood and still have it be a critical scene. And it gives you hierarchy. It gives you it gives you the structure of blood. It gives you the visual cues of nails. It gives you the visual cues of shaved heads. It gives you the content of Damane being interchangeable from their Suldam. So because Bale makes a point of saying it's a different Suldam on the boat, on Aeginan's boat, than the one who follows her. Yeah. And so they're just tools. And that's what really gives him the most unease. But I think he's important.
Yeah, this is such a dense chapter, right? We're 2 chapters in and already 40 minutes into the show. That's what I mean. And this happens to us. We are going to get to Barthanes. I call him Barthanes Manor here. That's going to happen for those of you that are watching. I promise we are not going to go another episode without getting there. But yes, there's Lord Turok. And let's jump to this, right? They go to Falme. And there's a lot of things going on here, right? We have the seal. Ridiculous. That's such an important piece. Showing up, and it can be something quick, but we show the relationship that Aeginan has with Turok, right? Where Bale kind of looks at it and he's like, I would never scrape that low for anybody, but that's just part of their culture, right? He sees the servant come in, and this is a time for, do you keep that aspect of just that's so unique about this culture? And then even the insect helmets, right? When I read this for the first time, I always thought that added some really interesting sci-fi element. I don't know why. Like in my head, it was very much like this, advanced culture aspect. That they had these insect-like helmets that they were using. So, and then the monsters aspect to this, where it isn't the dark one. It's just like these other monsters. So, when it comes to this, Todd, because Natalia just said this, she could drop Lord Turok. What is important about the second half of this chapter when they go to Falme that you think needs to still be adapted into the show? Is everything here that Jordan Dunn just has to be there?
I mean, he just did exactly. Urian did exactly what happened to Beldomon. He just put it in visually instead of it being spoken about. It's kind of that's one of the things that why I think this is so cool, because he shows this part of the Aiel, and then he shows this is the way that Seanchan are, and they're kind of two sides of the same coin in some ways. As far as Turok goes, I mean, like she said, it could be somebody else. The only real thing that he contributes, in my opinion, is when he fights Rand later on, and I don't know that that's really has to be him.
Yeah, and this is because there's so many pieces here, just from the servant that brings them cough. There's just all the different Quendalar, that they see, and he always he's somebody that's collecting this stuff. There's just so many aspects to the royalty and pieces about the Seanchan that it seems really difficult to try to fit it all in this kind of scene. So I'm hoping.
But it could be done visually. You don't have to. You don't have to point it out, but it could just be all there as part of the visual setting of the scene. Yeah. It doesn't have to be part of the conversation. The conversations can go more or less how they go in the text. You just don't have the exposition of what Beldomon is thinking at the time, and as all of this is happening. You can do all of that visually.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. This might be a scene that can just happen in 5 minutes or whatever. And he walks through the streets. You get a quick view of it. He walks in there. There's some bowing and handing over of something. But I want to call out one word that I think is important for them to adapt, both into the Aiel scene and this scene, which is ancestors. They both talk about ancestors. Yes. Incessantly, right? Everyone's talking about this. I mean, even, the Age of Legends plays a huge piece. I'm hoping that they do get that aspect of this right, just how key ancestors are to these two nations, and in the end to a lot of other things that are going on. So is there anybody else that wants to make a comment about this chapter before we move away from the Seanchan? Is there something that we missed, or do you think we've beaten it to death here?
I think it's another contrast between the Seanchan and the Aiel. The Seanchan going to the wetlands is your ancestors failed, and we're here to correct that. The Aiel is our ancestors failed, and we have been corrected.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good call out. I love that. Elliot, anything else before we move on from this one?
I think we've got it. To be honest, yeah.
Yeah, we beat this one to death. There you go.
That's what
for
we
anyone
do.
Watching. Well, it's so funny. Again, these are, I don't know. These are just way too dense. There's so many kind of cultural building moments, first contact moments, that it's ridiculous. So let's finally jump back to Dice Daimar and Kyrian and all this stuff going on here. I don't think we need to belabor this part. You can call me out on this if you want, but chapter 30, it's just the after effects of the Illuminators moments. Rand gets a couple more letters, right? And they go out to find if Ingtar showed up again, and he comes back and he's kind of ticked off because he thinks people are lying to him. And then they have the whole inn burning down. Hurin, they go save Hurin and also the Dragon Banner. And then they come out, and that's when everyone arrives. Do we need this whole inn burning down moment? Can they just arrive and move on? Do we need this whole kind of really dramatic fire saving scene, Natalia?
It's very evocative, Matt. I just like that you just tore through the chapter in about 30 seconds.
Yeah, look, I get it. They're crawling on the floor, and they go save him out of the thing, and it's really cool.
50 minutes. 50 minutes to go 2 chapters. 2 minutes.
Yes, this chapter I don't think deserves a lot of our attention, but that's my opinion.
It doesn't. I agree.
It doesn't. I agree
liked
too.
The fire. I thought it was real exciting, and it would make a nice smash to black moment to just have Rand sitting in the street laughing his ass off and hysteric. But
yeah.
I don't need it.
Is there anything here, Elliot, that you think is oh no, we would miss out on some important characterization, something here, or I mean, it's fine if it just makes a cool scene for television, and that's cool too.
Yeah, I think for me, there's obviously the establishing the invitation to Lord Barthanes' house, that's needed for later on, but you can move that wherever. The horn getting stolen, I think, is obviously something that does need to to happen
I
again.
mean, there's that.
So yeah,
Everybody's got
Minor.
cheese in
But
the
how you-
dozen. Come on.
Oh my gosh.
how
Yeah,
we sort of move around that again, it could be different. I mean, I agree. I did kind of like, it struck me as a very sort of TV cliffhanger moment. Is like Rand, like the horn's been stolen, the building's burnt down. You've just had this sort of exciting scene, and then you hear like Matt's voice in the distance, and Rand sort of looks up, and then cut credits.
yeah.
You know, everyone's excited for the next episode. But yeah, I think this scene could be chopped up and moved and spread out to be different.
Okay, I will say this. This has got to be the dumbest Rand and Loyal moment ever, because they've been attacked by Trollocs. They know that Pat and Fane is in the area. They're even coming into the inner city trying to find them. And he just wakes up and he's like, we're going to leave Hurin by himself. And we're going to go just walk away, because nothing possibly could happen in this moment. That's part I really hate. I would rather that we cut this scene back to when they're coming back from the Illuminators, all that's happened and they are being attacked, and then the inn is it's on fire, and that attack's all taken together as one, and they rush out. It's an evening thing. I think they would make it much more dramatic. They come out, they lose the horn, and then Matt and Varen and such, they show up, and I think we can consolidate those two scenes and we're done. Does anyone disagree with that we can get through this there?
Nope. It could almost be like the initial attack could be kind of like a distraction as well. So that then they sort of realize halfway through, they're like, oh wait, the horn, and then they go back and it's like, oh no, this was all one big setup to get the horn. I did like the bit with Loyal being like, let the books burn.
Yeah.
That kind of touched an emotional chord with me. I was like, oh.
And I think they can still do that, right? He's just
it
would be so impactful. Like Loyal's just killed his first person. He's just saved Rand, and then the inn's burning down, and they just got done with the Illuminators, and they just escaped, and now they've lost the horn, and they think that all is lost. I think they could combine those two moments together and still have Loyal run in and try to save his books. I think that's really cool. And it's funny.
Yeah, he's having a really bad day at that point, isn't he?
I mean, the only reason to keep the time space that you're proposing to sort of condense, Matt, is for the letters. And for him to have built up the tension with respect to the game. But again, there is a way to get around that. You just send the two letters right up front, because he's very interesting.
Well, and you can have that whole he's
Tavarin.
What is it called? Charlie and Chocolate Factory moment or something where like the innkeeper runs out and he's like, but Lord Rand, don't worry, I saved your letters for you, and he hands him these two letters that he got, like it was like, I got the golden ticket moment, So
that poor innkeeper is like, his entire livelihood's burnt down. He's like, but I've got your letters.
He totally would. That would be so in line with Kyrian. He'd be like, but don't worry, I've saved your letters from the king. Which exactly. So
that you were going to burn anyway. The irony.
The irony, exactly. I love it. Okay, so now we're jumped into, we rushed through that chapter, thank goodness. Chapter 31, On the Scent. We have Varen and everybody show up. They go over to her own inn here called the Great Tree Inn. Rand does the whole bathes and thinks about his life and thinks about his infatuation with Celine, which is really funny moments. And then they all hang out, and Rand does his exposition about telling how did they go through the portal stone world and how did they get here, because Varen makes some kind of joke about flying there, and Matt drops an egg. It's really funny. And I think there's just like comedic relief in this a bit that they could do after such a tense moment. And then they decide that yes, we're going to go in. Hurin jumps back. Yes, we're going to go into Lord Barthanes Manor, and that decision's made. This obviously has to happen from a transitionary standpoint to get to the manor. I think maybe it doesn't have to happen, Todd. I guess they could go to the inn and then just show up at the manor, but that'd be really weird. Is there something about this transition that you think is important for either Rand's characterization or Matt or the plot itself, other than just doing its job, which is getting us from point A to point B?
I think that's pretty much, it gets us from point A to point B. It's not really a very loaded chapter, other than they're just talking about how they're going to do it. So, go ahead. Burn me, Tal. Go.
No, it's just, this chapter is good for one thing, and it's the ranking of Aes Sedai strength.
Hmm.
It's the first time we've had an actual sort of off the cuff ranking.
Interesting. Yeah.
Now
I don't
it's
think I noticed that.
Varen,
Yeah.
but she clearly says there are only, like, she names them off, the people who could do something with that degree of power.
Yeah.
And then she mentions the girls still in training. So.
Yeah, there's a piece here where you could bring Selene or Lanfear back to play in the story, which would be interesting in that regard. You can kind of revisit the Portal Stones depending on what you've already done there. And that it does. There's just there's some fun kind of camaraderie moments here for the boys. I mean, I wouldn't call it camaraderie. They're just kind of like, they're all in shock, right? All of them are in just sure shock. And I think this is a good moment to step back and let them experience that shock together before they move forward. So I do like it for that. Sorry, you were going to say something, Natalia?
Just Perrin sort of trying to pull focus from Rand with Varen was really cute.
Yeah, they do need that piece, which is, they need to keep that connection, even though Matt's in a place right now where he just wants the dagger and to be healed at this point. And Perrin's kind of in his own head about the wolf powers, and he's like, we're all changing. I will say that Varen did say some interesting things here. I think she said to him, people see what they expect to see. So hopefully they can. That's something that, it's one of those where it's show, don't tell. I get it. But that's one of those throw off lines that I like that Jordan has. And I'm hopeful that they pull some of those in for Varen. But I do like that Perrin's POV at the end says, watching Varen smile small and mysterious, Perrin felt a chill. He did not think Rand knew half what he thought he did, not half. So I'm hoping they really get Varen right. And this is one of those small moments with Varen that I guess I hope they get that right. So I want to ask this question to Mary and Elliot. Do we need to see a scene here that we haven't seen, which is Pat and Fane going to the manor? Do we need to see that, or do you want that to remain off screen? And Mary, I'll give you the first shot at that. Should that stay off screen, or should we actually see like Pat and Fane burning the inn down, or his people, and then them going to the manor?
I like the element of mystery where it happens off screen. It adds depth, but I can be convinced either way. Okay, so no strong holding on that you think that's important. Is this a chance, Elliot, for an off-screen scene to kind of take, front and center? Do you want to see more Pat and Fane here get involved? Just his mischievous, evil kind of thing going on where he's excited about getting the chest itself and moving on? Or do you want this to remain kind of an unknown, like you think it's happened and they have to track him down?
I think I prefer the tracking down element. I'm kind of thinking of Fane here as kind of like the shark in Jaws. It's like the less you see, the more frightening he is. Yeah. Okay. The more he sort of does, but yeah.
I like this aspect. I like this aspect of it, but I'll be honest. You all know that I love Pat and Fane. So any chance that I had to get Pat and Fane back in the story on a scene, I was hoping I could convince you all. But it sounds like you guys are leaning towards leave it subtle. So I will ask everybody in chat: do we leave this subtle because I'm still hoping for some support on this, or do we bring Pat and Fane to the forefront and get some screen time with him in this moment? Give me a thumbs up for more Pat and Fane. Thumbs down for no more Pat and Fane. Matt, you're wrong. Yeah, like Natalia's doing. She's showing you what she's signaling to you what she would like you to do.
Elliot nailed it. He's like the shark. If we can't use that going forward, what is the point?
Yeah, no, I hear it. Okay, so I want to approach chapter 32. We're finally at Barthanes Manor. And yes, for those of you that are like, are they ever going to do call-ins? We are, but I want us to get through Barthanes or into it before I allow you to start calling in and get a couple calls in. So I want to approach this one. Does anyone else watching or any of you have the feeling that when they walk up to the manor, you're watching like Ocean's 11, kind of moment where this scene has always been the most... Well, it's always been the most like, Hollywood-esque kind of thing, right? They're Matt's pretending to be the Lord for Rand, and they're all like, "Shut up, we're coming up to the door," and they have to like give their entry, and they're all like nervous because someone's gonna figure them out, and then they have to go in and pretend to be things and have these awkward conversations because they're gonna try to steal something in the manor. I don't know. There's just something very like I've seen this scene 1,000 times in movies, and where they're crashing a party, breaking in. and I can't get over seeing this. That's how I always see it, and I think it's fine if they adapt it this way. Is this what do you want to see this whole kind of like Matt complaining about being his servant and they're all kind of like walking
it's like
up.
The Steve Buscemi of the group.
No, he's the
Reservoir
Matt
Dogs.
He's the Matt Damon of Ocean's 11, the one whining and complaining.
He's the Mr. Pink of Reservoir Dogs.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow, the Steve Buscemi. I like it. Yeah. So, do you think that do you agree, Elliot? Is this the classic moment that needs to stay in here? The one that we've seen in every single movie that we've ever watched. When it comes to stealing something from really rich people, or
100%.
You're like,
I think this scene is just the whole of this chapter should just be one sort of like comedic breath of fresh air. I think Rand, like when they enter and they announce who's like with Rand, and everyone just sort of goes quiet and stares, and then Rand trying to be like seduced twice, and that whole element to it, like the whole scene could just it doesn't have to be long, but it could just, I almost feel like it just goes from one thing to the next to the next to the next, and Rand's just feeling totally overwhelmed by this, and it should just be funny, and then when he sees Tom, it's like, there's my escape, and just like and then we're like back to it. But yeah, I
think you could. Right? Don't pay too much attention to this. Just see them kind of going in. They get introduced. Kind of have that kind of cut scenes where they jump between. This is a party and they're part of it, and you see Rand is, obviously being, pushed up against a wall. and
I wouldn't even have it cut. I would have.
You do the
have
full
this
thing.
Scene as just. Okay. I'd have this scene as one long take. If they could, like, I mean, I know that's an ask, but like, I just feel like staying with Rand for that, and just all these different people coming up to it, because I kind of got that sense from the book. It was just like Rand's just like, he's being maneuvered through all this stuff. Everyone is like, and now you talk to them, and then you talk to them, and I feel like just getting across that chaos that Rand is feeling right now, it would be a really fun scene. I can't wait to see it.
Yeah. This definitely all has to stay in here. Todd, we have Rand speaking with the Lord here. Do we need any of this though? Do we need any of these specific discussions that kind of come out of it? I know it's just Rand here with the Lord and also with Tom. Do you want us to have these, or can it just be this, these interactions he has with these people, and then Hurin comes in and kind of calls him out, and then they move on?
I like what Elliot said about one long take, and the only reason I think he needs to talk to Tom is because it throws this gigantic monkey wrench into the Dice Damar. However you say it, I'm horrible with those. But it's just like, it just ruins everything. And because nobody knows what to do. What's this young lord talking to a Gleeman about? And I think that is what sets Tom in the hot seat later on.
This is what gets Dina killed.
Mm-hmm.
This 30-second interaction with Tom is what gets Dina killed.
Exactly.
So I'd like to see it. We also need to see Barthanes talking to Rand, because spoilers, that's the only reason we know whose head is in the bag later.
We need to see his head and get a good.
So we need to see him.
We need to see the head attached to the body before.
Right.
Well, I will say I want this one line. It was just so well, like Jordan. When the women approach Rand, one of the ladies says, "Bring your flute to my manor, and we will talk. Perhaps you'll teach me to play." Yeah, they definitely need to get the this moment right for these.
The innuendo.
Yes,
that's subtext.
Yeah, that's some.
And isn't she the one that complains about the other one not being subtle as well? As if like that.
Yeah, and then she becomes Aiel.
So I think you need to have that moment.
She so does.
The
layers.
They're so. Oh my gosh, are you serious? This is the same
she
person?
does.
Yes.
And this is the only link we get to Brienne Taberwyn before we see her 4 books down the line with Lamgwin. This is the only time we see her as a noble lady.
Oh wow. Yeah.
I have to go. I love you guys.
Oh yeah. So Natalia, everyone. Say goodbye to everybody. We will be down here to 3 panelists. Natalia, thank you so much for being with us.
Have fun, guys.
Thanks to everyone in chat. I'm sure it's happy to see you.
We'll
see you soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye. We were 4, and now we are 3. By the way, note goes out to everybody that's watching. The call-in line, for some reason, is having a huge kind of audio problem, and so you wouldn't be able to hear me if you called in when we've done some tests. The production crew is running around behind here running some tests, so we probably will forego any calls. I apologize now. It kind of sucks. I was hoping to have some calls tonight, especially some of Elliot's friends, razzing him or hazing him in some form or fashion, but it seems like that won't be possible, and that's a bummer. But so we'll have to do that next time, Elliot, when we have you back. I'll have to have you in for a show where we can actually have that take place. But yeah, so those
more time to think about it.
Yeah, exactly. If you decide to ever come back, that's.
I'd love to.
So
I'm having a ball.
So good. You're at the ball, having a ball. I like it. That's where we're at right now. Which is this? How long do you want this scene? How much do we need to get to know Kyrian culture here, Elliot? And at the royal level, because this could be really quick, right? You could probably do this scene completely where they go out to the Waygate and they've entered and go out to the Waygate in probably 5 to 10 minutes if you wanted to rush through it that quickly. Where the Lord kind of grabs Rand immediately. They talk for just a minute. They say a couple things. Rand gets pushed against the wall. You kind of jump back and forth between him and Varen and others. And then he sees Tom and he runs over there. He has the 30-second thing that we just talked about. And then he gets pulled away. Or do you want this to take more time? Do you want to get to know this culture and its people at the royal kind of elitist level better than that might give us from an adaptation standpoint?
I think the quicker the better, just because I feel like you could establish a lot in a short space of time, especially with like all the invitations and people talking to him. And then I feel like, because then when Rand comes back to Kyrian like books later, and there's that whole, then you can like get sort of like really into it, and it's almost like how that contrasts to what happens, because this is sort of like Kyrian in the glitz and the glamour. It's what it wants to show off as, and I think that's an important. But I think getting to the Waygate as soon as possible is also important.
Yeah, so an interesting point though in chat, Miss Sarah James and Shantini have pointed out that they're going to have to go through a lot to set up the scene. So because they do, from a cost perspective, costumes and everything else, they probably will want to get more out of it at this point, because we don't really come back here too quickly. So that's the question, is if we include this from a scene perspective, how much they really dig into Lord Barthanes a little bit more, and or do we get something in between, Mary? Like, do we try to get our money's worth here and then get out as quickly as possible, or really embed here in Kyrian for a bit and get to know the nobles?
You could use this scene to again draw visual parallels or visual attention to the fact that the elites operate at a completely different level than the farm boys and the villagers. These are the people who think they are in charge of everything, and later on they find how much in charge they actually are or aren't. I think they would get a lot of bang for the buck by doing this scene. It would be a visually compelling scene. You kind of need this party is the spark that sends Kyrian into civil war, and
True.
It just causes the entire city to explode, more or less. And there's a lot going on in here, and there's a lot of, I don't know if it's Barthanes is just full of crap, or Jordan didn't know what was going on with his story yet, because he hadn't laid everything down. And I don't actually believe that. But, a lot of what Barthanes is saying, is like, well, I've heard that the royal line of Andor has this coloring. Dude, your brother married the queen. I'm
Right.
sure you were there. You would not have missed that party. Okay. But we don't know that Tarangel is a Damondred yet, and we don't know that Moiraine is a Damondred yet. So there's a lot to unpack there if they choose to use it.
Yeah.
This
Brian.
whole scene was to get the horn, the MacGuffin back, and we do need that part. And I think the party as the distraction makes for some good TV.
Yeah, and this brings up Brian's point, which Todd, I'm going to ask you this question. Brian in chat just said, maybe we skip most of the party aspects and just have behind the scenes with, Matt bumbling around trying to be a servant and sucking at it, right? You could bring in some off-scene stuff here with Matt that just kind of follows him instead of following Rand, and then you could kind of cut to Rand seeing Tom and still get that scene in there, but stay behind the scenes. Do you like that idea of swapping this for TV? Instead of seeing that kind of ball scene that we've seen all the time, this gala of people. Would you do that?
I do like that. Yeah.
Okay,
I like it a lot better because I have to say that even with what we're talking about, everything going on in the scene and doing it all in one shot, I really don't like this scene all that much. So if we can make it work a different way, then I'm all for it. And I think Matt is the perfect one to kind of follow around, listening to him bitch about having to limp and all that stuff that's going on.
Yeah, I like that. I like that idea a lot, and so I want to put that to the panel. This is where we get to make. We'll see how the TV show actually turns out compared to what we think. Would the panel choose, cutting the ball scene and really kind of sitting with Matt as a servant, or do you want the scene as it's in the books? What would you pick, Elliot? Would you want to go behind the scenes with Matt or as it's in the books?
Oh God, I'm feeling so. I want both because I do think that scene with Matt, because I think just as much about Kyrian is revealed from how the servants probably interact as much, and you could have such comedy with the contrast. Okay,
but this is the problem. You have to. I'm going to force you to make one. You have to pick one. There's no both here. You get like a little. I'm going to give you a little tiny bit of the ball, and then mostly Matt and the servants, or the opposite.
I'll say mostly Matt because we've got the ball in the
mostly
books.
Matt.
Let's
okay.
have something new. Let's have
Todd,
something new.
What do you want? Mostly Matt?
Mostly Matt. Yeah.
Mary, are you for a mostly Matt?
Stodginess.
All right, fine.
Okay, so everyone in the chat, I want to ask you guys, thumbs up for mostly Matt or mostly Rand. That's your choice here. Thumbs up for mostly Matt, thumbs down is mostly Rand. I guess like Glenn just did, you can type in the words mostly Matt or mostly Rand if you want to try that too. But we've just made a huge decision. Consequences are incredible. We're cutting this huge scene of the ball, and we're gonna mostly focus on something unseen with Matt.
And we made it to the manor.
Have the ball. You still have the ball. It's just that's the distraction.
That's the distraction. Yeah.
It is the distraction.
True. Okay,
it's
so
shiny.
Exactly. Yeah, I like that. So, chapter 33, we're finally here. Huron brings Matt and Lloyd. They all go back and they find the Waygate, and this is where they find out that it's, this is how it's happened, and this is where they've gone, and they have the whole opening of the Waygate moment here. We have the interaction with Machin Sheen, as we found that it's pronounced. I think I pronounced that like Jordan did. And then we find out from Jordan that Machin Sheen and the evil that infected Pat and Fane, or I guess Pat and Fane you could call them still, they have a professional relationship, and that's why Machin Sheen happens to be, or professional courtesy was that Machin Sheen happened to be hanging out and available when this Waygate opened. This moment does have pretty big consequences for the rest of the plot, right? They eventually have to go and use a portal stone to get up there to Toman Head. But that comes later. This Waygate moment, I know this is going to be controversial. Elliot, do we need this Waygate thing to happen, right? Do you think this is important to the plot itself? Is there some other way it could happen? Or is this a great moment to kind of find out we've just been introduced to the Aiel and the Seanchan, and then we're reminded that there's this Machin Sheen evil, and somehow it's pairing with the Pat and Fane evil, which is separate from the Dark One's evil. What of this needs to stay? What needs to go for TV?
So I actually had some thoughts on this. I feel like we need this scene, but we don't need the Waygate later. We only need one Waygate scene where they're blocked. And I would say I'd pick this one because I quite like the idea of when Rand is hearing the voices of Machin Sheen. I think I've been saying Machin Shin for so long.
Me too.
So I'm going to try and be careful of that. But I like the idea of in amongst those voices, maybe you could have just quite subtly Fane's voice saying I'll be waiting for you or something, therefore sort of foreshadowing the message Rand is about to receive as well, but also creating that link between Fane and the Black Wind, and also sort of Rand could then from that have a sense of like, I have a feeling like any waygate we try and use, he's going to be there. And therefore you can go straight to sort of like, let's use a portal stone. And again, with like Veren's reveal at the end of this chapter as well, that Matt's time is running out. You know, it's really got to be, we don't have time. We've got to find the most immediate way of doing it. If it's not the ways, it's going to be the portal stone. And just moving straight off that. The portal stone could be in the steading, because I do kind of like establishing the Ogier. But yeah, just... Put the portal stone
over by the steading. That's interesting. So you're saying cut out that whole kind of like secondary piece of this, which I do like, but still maybe keeping some of the steading piece there, briefly touching on it, and then just jumping right to the portal stone. Do you agree with this, Todd? Do you like how Elliot's laid that out? Is that what we need to do to kind of cut for time here and not have so many kind of like option A, B, C, and D?
Right. I do like that, because I have cutting steading Sofu. I have it as completely gone. Just get rid of it.
Wow. Okay. So completely gone. And that's a good question, Mary. Are you up for a completely gone on the steading Sofu, however you pronounce that? Would you want to drop this whole interaction, meeting Aerith and such and the elders?
No, you can't. If you're going to keep loyal, you got to keep Aerith. And that's when, they come back later in the story. So you need, if you're going to do that, you got to introduce them. If you're going to get rid of them altogether, then you can do that. Yes. I do like what Elliot mapped out. I think that's a very elegant solution to holding on to the tension that's building up, and the you're running out of time. We got to do this. We got to keeping that focused and sharp without having to check every single way gate nearby.
Right.
You can just say there aren't any other way gates nearby and move on with your life. That's easy enough to do.
Yeah, to this point, Elliot, this question of how much the Ogier, and Loyal's, interaction with Aerith and the elders and such, would you still want those scenes? Like, do you still see that as kind of impactful to the plot right now? In other words, is it something they can add later and we can, get that later on down the road? Or is it key to kind of this whole thing that's happening between Rand's relationship with Loyal and everything else going on? Is it a keep kind of thing, even though we're skipping this whole like second waygate idea?
I feel like it can be touched upon briefly with Loyal perhaps voicing his concerns, and I think the most touching moment of that scene is when the elders sort of voice their concerns and Rand is like, no, I'm taking responsibility for him.
Sure.
That's kind of like the big moment that I feel like really develops their relationship. So if you want to keep something of that, keep that. And I would say less focus on perhaps like Loyal and the marriage and things. Although I did find it hilarious how Rand sort of compares how the Ogier do it to how they do it in Emond's Field, and Matt being like, that's not how we do it, and then Perrin thinking, or Rand thinking, I think that is how we do it.
Yeah, there's some interesting pieces there. Yeah, I like this idea. I think the whole panel's on board, but I want to clarify this. Cutting the entire steading scene, no Ogier interaction. It goes from Waygate to Portal Stone immediately, or retaining some of the Ogier interaction, but it still goes from Waygate. So keep the steading or kick the steading. And I want to start with you, Elliot. Keep or kick?
Keep.
Mary, keep or kick the steading?
Keep.
Todd, keep or kick the steading?
Kick.
Okay, so I'm going to say, oh gosh, people are going to hate me for this one because I retconned Loyal. Just everyone remember that when you're watching this. I retconned him back into our live adaptation, but I will say kick the steading in this regard. So, but we're only 4. There's 2-2. I'm going to let chat finish this one off. I'll just look to capture the most thumbs up. Thumbs up means keep the steading. Thumbs down means we can kick it. So let me see in chat. For those of you still watching, this would be one of the things we'll have to come back for later on. But yeah, show me thumbs up, keep, thumbs down, kick the steading. I'm kind of curious if they'll answer our question here. I want to go back to one more piece before we end for our, I guess for some of us, it's night, and then some of us afternoons. And so before we end out here, because we're not going to tackle the Portal Stone. That one belongs at the beginning of our next episode. So I want to tackle something that we did skip here. Tom returning home and finding Dina murdered. And the men finding out this whole piece. I think this is something that obviously needs to stay because it, kicks off the killing of the king, right? And then we have Padan Fain reaching Tommen Head and ingratiating himself with Lord Turok. Another key piece here. So Mary, this Tom section seems like it's an obvious, like we have to keep it. Or do you agree?
I don't know. I mean, Dina is fridged. She is absolutely fridged to move the plot along. And that just is, do we really need to keep that kind of narrative in our stories? Can we move the plot along in another way, or do we have to have the girl die so that the guy can go off and avenge her and start a civil war?
Okay, so do you still believe in the Civil War being part of the show and you just want it to have another mechanism?
Yes.
Okay, so your suggestion is we don't need this piece of the plot with Dina, but we can have Tom make this choice or someone else. In other words, it doesn't have to be him. Something that happens at this party could kick off the Civil War without the need of this, what you consider the plot device here. Elliot, do you agree with this? Like, do we need this kind of what can turn into just kind of a plot device, like the avenging the death of the woman yet again?
leaving
another.
Agree with that.
Okay. So
I did get that sense from reading it the first time. I was just kind of like, oh, right, I see. That's why we met Dina. I think we could find a different device to move this along. And I think that's something that could be quite easily done as well. So, yeah.
Todd, are you for the revenge killing at Dina's death? Are you a keep the revenge kind of person?
I wanted to cut Dina when we met her the first time. And
oh, wow. So it doesn't matter what I think, because I think you guys are. So it's interesting watching the chat while we do this, because every once in a while, a lot of people completely disagree with that. So this doesn't mean if you're about to vote on this, it doesn't mean we're saying get rid of the Civil War. We're saying thumbs up for keep Dina's death, thumbs down for, cutting Dina's death and keeping the Civil War for both of those answers. So is it thumbs up, we keep Dina's revenge plot story, or thumbs down, we figure out a different way to get to Civil War? I'm kind of curious what everybody in chat thinks here. And then let's jump to our last piece here. We're ending on what I think is, one of the best characters in the book, Padan Fain. I think he needs to arrive in Tommen Head, ingratiates himself with Lord Turok, and gives him the horn. Whether or not, like Natalia said, do we need Lord Turok himself? I like this character a lot. He's so unique and different than everything else. He just shows up in this, he's got the fingernails and the bald head and the blue silk thing, and he's drinking his calf. And there's just something about him that I really like keeping in the story. So, but do you want to see this whole kind of Padan Fain ingratiating himself piece? Is this an important thing for us to see on screen, or can it be just something that we see later on has happened, or is this really important? So let me go to Elliot first. Is there an important piece to the story itself, or even a particular plot that you think this scene really captures?
I think the important thing with Fain in this sort of section is you've got the threat towards Emond's Field that he sort of left, that Rand is really thinking about and is strongly motivating him, and then the horn being given over to the Seanchan, which is another big thing. I would have this scene almost play out very subtly, and have sort of Lord Turok and someone sort of coming up to him, maybe Bail Doman's there as well, someone saying oh, someone's come with another gift for you, and then seeing the chest be opened, and then it being the horn, and then the camera's sort of always panning up, and there's Fain, and it's all being left then to sort of the imagination of what's going to happen next. Because then with the portal stone and Rand's revelation, it's 4 months later, then the audience is left oh my god, what has happened?
I like that idea of not necessarily. I like the idea of just Bail Damon, showing up and seeing it, and not necessarily having to see this ingratiation moment and just knowing that somehow Padan Fain has moved himself into it. By the way, to answer our question, we're keeping the steading. Sorry, everybody. The steading has been kept according to what I count for thumbs up. I'll go back and check, maybe. Okay, I'm not going to. But what it looks like to me, thumbs up. But I did see as far as, get rid of the plot for Dina. So we got a lot of support there. Drop the Dina side and just go the route of keep the Civil War. So, Mary, to your point, you captured a lot of the imagination of the viewers. So interesting tweaks to our live adaptation.
I'll give it back. You can have your imagination back.
So, any final thoughts on this Padan Fain scene, Todd or Mary? Do you like the idea of kind of not necessarily having this idea of that you can see it later and you see the horn out and Lord Turak obviously has it and Padan Fain is now a counselor to him later on? Or do you think we need to see this prior to the Portal Stone moment happening and know that Padan Fain's there and whispering in his ear the entire time before we go through that whole entire, really complex idea of multiple lives being lived over 3 months?
The only thing in this that, it doesn't really even matter to me, but Fain's whole angle is he's telling Turok that he'll open the box for him. That's the angle that he's playing. And Turok pops the box open immediately. And so he has to totally and completely change gears to ingratiate himself and be able to stay there and eventually get his dagger back.
But it makes him into kind of like seeing him ingratiate himself might distract a little bit from this idea that he's this really like subtle evil. But then again, he is kind of Weasley and he has always been that way. But kind of curious, like not seeing it, would that be better in the sense of like, it's happened. You just didn't see the moment like Egan and
right.
It would have to be handled carefully because we know it. We've read the books, but the viewers may not know it. If he's just suddenly there and suddenly an advisor with no reason behind it, that's distracting. It doesn't make sense.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. So I'm definitely for them doing that scene right. I mean, it has to be. But mostly what I'm asking myself is it key to know that happens before Rand's thing goes on? Is there a way that you can still show it post that event, or is that kind of a Smash to Black kind of moment where this is happening and then you get the Portal Stone, you're like, oh my gosh, this guy's been he's been in his ear for months now. I don't know. I
think it has more effect for the 4-month reveal if you know that's going to have big consequences.
Yeah, that's true. And I think definitely leaving that piece in there prior to the Portal Stone is an important kind of nod to the viewers. It lets their brains lets their minds go through this, like what could possibly have happened. I just hope if this makes sense, if they're going to set that up, I just hope they give us something that happened. I don't just want to find out like, cool, Padan Fain's been hanging around in town. Who cares? As long as they're going to build something in, like maybe Padan Fain has ingratiated himself. Maybe some of the people that he pulls away are from the Seanchan. You see what I'm saying? Like, I want to show machinations of Padan Fain if we're going to go this route. 4 months of him sitting in a town is going to make a huge difference, and I don't think the books ever do justice to that idea. And that's what I think they need to fix in the script if they do this, right? If they just come and show it to us afterwards and Padan Fain's there, then your imagination can kind of run with like when it happened and when he showed up and how much influence he has. But knowing that he's had a lot of influence to me means that you should show Padan Fain's influence in a way that I don't think that Robert Jordan necessarily did as much. From what I'm recalling, the timing is concerned there. So I'll have to go back and look at that and get a closer idea of exactly how much time they're together to, to cement my belief on that. So, by the way, so those of you that are still watching us, really appreciate you being here this afternoon. Please like this video. Again, that's how people find us and find this video, other Wheel of Time fans. Please subscribe if you're not. We'd love to have you being part of this march to the premiere of the show in our weekly live call-in talk shows. And I apologize for call-ins not working today. It's one of those things that just every once in a while after 50 shows, something you expect to work doesn't work out as much as you think it's going to. So
when we get to 10,000, you'll be able to see the guy to blame.
Exactly. And for those of you that haven't checked out Elliot's videos on Thread, please go do that. Like I said, it's in our description. He has this awesome video all about adaptations. I love his idea, the ideas he expresses there, and that's pretty much a Narg mentioned you in a tweet, and that's how I saw your video. And so thanks to Narg for mentioning you, and I appreciate you making some time this evening to be with us, Elliot. Is there anything you want to say, anything that came out of the kind of digging into these chapters that you think, just from an overall standpoint, you want to make sure the TV series gets right about the things we've adapted tonight that you just haven't mentioned?
Oh, I think the only thing that I haven't mentioned that I put some like serious thought into was, as I mentioned to you earlier, the how to show the pain inflicted by the Idam. But I guess that's going to be maybe that'll be maybe I'll make a video about that.
Yeah, that's a great thing to end us on. And like I said, this is just about the time we normally end, so it's like perfect timing on that concept. Did you have an idea that at least you want to at least tell us a little bit about, and then maybe do a video on that? That'd be a fun thing to kind of come back to.
Yeah, so I was really racking my brain on this because again, like I feel like just showing, great acting can go so far, but I think having like Egwene sort of thrash in her seat as all these imaginary whips hit her won't be as effective. So the solution I kind of thought was perhaps maybe you could have it so, imagine like she suddenly like reacts and like grabs her hand or something, and then her hand is like scored, like burnt, like terribly, and then when she looks again, it's like gone, and so that it's in her head. But I feel like that would just be and because you could really show some like horrifying stuff there. You could have like it like boils just like appearing or something, or like a giant gash, and then she looks again and it's gone. And I feel like that would be such a shocking image as well and you could have good sound effects as well combined with all that the audience is just really taken aback, and you get a huge sense of just like the sheer horror that this Idam is. And I think that was my suggestion.
No, this is great, and you've definitely, this is a great topic, and someday maybe we'll do a show after you do your video. Maybe we'll have you back and talk about like visualizing some of these things. I can imagine, having the camera go down a hall where you're seeing lots of Damane, and just seeing them shift, like you're seeing things happening to them. Yeah. Right. Whatever it is, like you're seeing them scream, you're seeing them contort, you're seeing burns on their skin, and then a second later they're gone, and you're just seeing all these things that are happening visually to them, and they're just sitting there, kind of like maybe tears coming down their face, but they have to stay, and not show the pain they're going through. I think could be extremely powerful for us. It'd be amazing. Yeah, I love the idea. Sorry if we didn't get a chance to bring that up before. I apologize. You had mentioned it, and I meant to bring that in. So great point. Anything else that we missed that you want to bring up before we end for the evening, Mary or Todd?
I'm gonna echo what Tal said. Great Hunt's always been one of my favorite books, but the more I dive into it, the more I really like it, the more I really appreciate every.
We just lost her, but I love Mary.
Everything that's being set up. There's so much foreshadowing in this book that we don't see for another one books, but the ground. Sorry, the NTN. There's a lot of wind. There's a lot of storm coming.
No, I think we got your point. I think that's absolutely true, which is the Great Hunt is better than it often is remembered or maybe given credit for, in my opinion. We always talk about the Shadow Rising and the Great Hunt. To me, they're right there. They're right there next to each other. I often pick the Shadow Rising above it, but maybe they're just too hard to compare. Like this book has just proved extremely dense, extremely interesting, and just compelling from a narrative standpoint. I love that. Todd, anything else before we go?
No, I think Mary about covered what I was going to say, which was not much. So.
Okay, so that's good. We'll be back next month. I mean, we're back every Wednesday and almost every Sunday for the next 8 weeks, as I have it scheduled out so far. We'll start revealing some of those interesting, exciting kind of panels that we plan to do over that time. But next month we will have another live adaptation. We'll start with the Portal Stone. That whole section is so interesting for us to break down of what happens to them in their other lives that they live through these mirror world kind of convergence as the metaphysics work for Robert Jordan. And I just want to call out, thank you everyone for watching. We just hit 6,000 subscribers today. It's so awesome. So congrats to everyone. I really appreciate the panelists that have all been on the show, all the live viewers, all of you that are sharing us across social media. It's very much appreciated for all of us over here at the Innkeeper Hatch and his family. Really appreciate that too. So as around here, I guess today it's a little bit different. We say good afternoon and good evening from the Dusty Wheel and smash to black.
If you want news and rumors that appeal, welcome to the Dusty Wheel.